In the previous lesson, we created our system information tags, configured our login and close runtime buttons, and added dynamic displays for the current logged-in user and the current page. In today's lesson, we're going to create different users, assign them authorization levels, and then use those authorizations to control what each user is allowed to do inside our SCADA. This is an important feature because in a real industrial system, not every operator should have access to every function. For example, an operator may be allowed to start and stop the process, while only an administrator can manage users or modify important system settings. WinCC allows us to achieve this using users and authorizations. Think of a user as an individual person who logs into the SCADA. An authorization is simply a permission that determines what that user is allowed to do. Let's create our users. From the WinCC Explorer homepage, open User Administrator. You'll notice that WinCC already creates a default group containing one administrator user. We could use this default group, but for this project we'll create our own so you can understand the complete process. Right-click User Administrator and select New Group. Rename the group to something meaningful. I'll call mine Traffic Light _ Users. A group is simply a way of organizing users who belong to the same project. Now let's create 3 users. In the Users table, enter the following users: Admin, Engineer, and Operator. Assign each user a password that you'll easily remember, because we'll use these accounts later when testing our runtime. Once you're done, expand your group and you'll see the 3 users listed underneath it. Now we need to decide what each user is allowed to do. Select the admin user. On the right-hand side, you'll see a long list of authorization options. These are simply permissions that can later be attached to buttons, screens, tables, and many other objects. For the admin user, I'll enable almost every authorization except free alarms. Don't worry if you don't yet understand what every authorization does. At this stage, the important thing is simply understanding that checking a box gives that user permission to perform a certain action. Later in this lesson, you'll see how easy it is to apply those permissions to objects. Now configure the operator user. Since operators usually perform fewer tasks than administrators, we'll only enable a few authorizations. For this project, make sure you enable Change Picture, because we'll use it shortly. The remaining permissions are entirely up to you and will depend on your own application. Now configure the engineer user. I'll enable most permissions but leave user administration unchecked. That means the engineer can operate and maintain the system but cannot create or manage users. If you're finding these lessons helpful and they're making WinCC Explorer easier to understand, consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps support the series, and you'll also be notified when the next lessons are released. Besides the built-in authorizations, WinCC also allows us to create our own custom permissions. Let's create one. Click User Administrator, then open the Authorization Levels tab. Enter a unique ID number and give your authorization a name. I'll create one called Close Runtime. This permission will control who is allowed to shut down the SCADA runtime. Now return to the operator user and enable this new authorization. We'll leave it disabled for the other users. Creating your own authorization levels gives you complete control over what different users are allowed to do. Now that our users and permissions are ready, let's start applying those permissions to our SCADA. We'll begin with the administration page. The User Administration table allows users to create accounts, delete users, and change passwords. Clearly, we don't want every operator to have access to those functions. Only administrators should be able to manage users. Double-click the User Administration control to open its configuration window. Open the Toolbar tab. Locate Operator Authorization. Click the Browse button. You'll now see the authorization levels we assigned earlier. Choose User Administration. Since only the admin user has this authorization, only administrators will be allowed to use the toolbar functions inside this table during runtime. Now open the Online Configuration tab. For protection, also select User Administration. This protects the control itself from unauthorized users. Before closing the configuration window, let's make one final adjustment. Open the General tab. Disable Movable, Closable, and Sizable. This prevents operators from accidentally moving, resizing, or closing the user administration table while the SCADA is running. Click Apply, then OK. Next, let's secure our navigation buttons. Our goal is simple. If someone has not logged in, they shouldn't be able to move between pages. Select all 4 navigation buttons. You can do this by holding Control while clicking each button. Open the Properties window. Go to Miscellaneous. Locate Access Protection. Choose the Authorization Change Picture. Earlier, we assigned this permission to all 3 of our users. That means any user who logs in can navigate through the SCADA, but someone who isn't logged in cannot. Now let's configure the Close Runtime button. Select the button and open its properties. Again, go to Access Protection. This time, choose our Custom Authorization Close Runtime. Since we only assigned this authorization to the operator account, only that user will be able to close the runtime. Everyone else will see the button, but they won't have permission to use it. This demonstrates how custom authorization levels can be used to control very specific actions. Finally, let's secure our process controls. Open the home page. Select both the Start and Stop buttons. Open Properties, then Access Protection. We'll assign the Change Picture authorization. Since all 3 users have this permission, anyone who logs in will be allowed to start and stop the traffic light sequence. If you wanted only engineers or administrators to control the process, you would simply assign a different authorization here instead. We'll do the same for the timer preset I/O fields. Select the preset time fields, open Access Protection, and assign the Change Picture authorization. This means only authenticated users can change timer values from the SCADA. Anyone who hasn't logged in will only be able to view the application without making changes. At this point, our user management system is complete. We've created users, assigned authorization levels, created a custom permission, and used those permissions to secure different parts of our SCADA. In the next lesson, we'll test everything we've built by logging in with different user accounts and verifying that each authorization behaves exactly as expected. The next video is already on your screen. I'll see you over there.